if you don't have a solid delivery mechanism, then turning up the heat, it's not going to give you an amazing result. It'll actually accelerate your decline and demise, right? Because you'll have reputational problems, you'll have negative feedback, you'll have team fractures, people leaving. It's basically a nightmare when you have too much of a good thing. So today we're going to be having a look at the whole business model, strategy, execution thing. James Schramko here. Welcome back to my podcast. I've brought along my friend Lloyd Thompson for this from VirtualDOO.com. G'day, Lloyd.
G'day, James. Thanks for having me again.
We've had a popular run of podcasts lately in the previous episodes where I've been talking about some of the transformations that have been happening, I guess, behind the scenes with my own clients. I've particularly leaned on things like business modeling. I'm obviously very excited. I've got Hammond AI cooking along there. I've put a lot of effort into the frameworks. I can, within weeks, take somebody's dumpster fire and turn it into a brand new business model and then give assets. But what I do see as a common theme is the two sides to this. There's one, it's great to have a plan, and two, now you have to implement the plan. And of course, I'm helping people through that process from my side, but I'm always leaning on the operations side of it as well. And that's really what you're a world-class expert at. So I'd like to sort of talk today about some scenarios where you're seeing perhaps a disconnect between the plan and operations, some of the typical things we can look for, maybe a few tips and ideas about how we might integrate business models smoothly. So hopefully you can help share a few ideas around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do see many great businesses out there, fantastic business model. And then behind the veneer, there's some wires hanging out of the wall and like messy processes, unclear accountability, inconsistent communication. And these are really stopping the back end from going much better, getting much more efficient, getting that delivery through. And so I just wanted to talk about a few common scenarios where I'm seeing founders going wrong in the operations world.
Cool. So basically, even if they know they're going down the wrong path and they know what the new path looks like, they're basically getting held up with all the things that are basically not replaceable at this point. The things we've talked about in previous episodes, I'm guessing, like processes and accountability and communication, well, the good old-fashioned stuff. And I think examples would be useful. Maybe you can share with us a few things you've seen and what lessons we can take away from that.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, again, perfect businesses out there, reoccurring revenue, doing really well. And then when we look at the core delivery processes, the founder's keen to just ramp it up super quick. And I can see the importance of that. You've got the business coming in the front end and you want to get it all done. But sometimes if you turn the volume up too quickly, then instead of saving time, that can produce errors. And two areas where I've seen that happen quite a lot recently are, well, one is hiring. Like, we're always going to need to hire, even with AI agents coming. And
I was going to say, are we? Do we really need to hire? Yeah, no, I agree. We absolutely, I've said this a few times, it's way too early to just hand over everything to the robots, because I think what you're alluding to there is if you don't have a solid delivery mechanism, then turning up the heat, it's not going to give you an amazing result. It'll actually accelerate your decline and demise, right? Because you'll have reputational problems, you'll have negative feedback, you'll have team fractures, people leaving. It's basically a nightmare when you have too much of a good thing.
Absolutely. I mean, in hiring in particular, and I'm a big fan of using AI and AI agents. I've seen people take all of their applications that have come in, all the resumes, load it into a folder and have AI run it, and then against their criteria, and then help shortlist what the good candidates are. I think that is a great idea.
I was doing that yesterday.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea. It works.
I'm involved with a recruitment business and we had 500 applicants, and I put them in a drive and used Gemini to look for where are the graphic designers, who are the social media people, who are the bookkeepers. But this is all contained and behind closed doors. This is not going to be touching the candidates.
And this does make sense, and so I'm not criticizing that as a process. What I have seen go wrong is when you're going to do something like that with automation and AI, you need to just make sure that that's a properly structured workflow and it's working first. So test it with a small amount. Okay, I've got 10 resumes. Am I getting one or two that fit the criteria? Okay, cool. Let's do 100. Okay, is it still right? Now let's crank up the volume. That works. But even big companies have got this wrong. I remember a few years ago, Amazon did this, and then they found that their AI was only selecting male candidates because they had only trained that on what the good candidates were. So this is a work in progress, but you need to test it before you turn the volume up. And the same thing's true for the other one I see all the time, and everyone must see this in their inbox every day, is email outreach. So again, it's totally practical to be sending emails using automation, using AI. But if that process is done badly, I'm not talking about high name. We've all seen that. I'm talking about something that's not properly looked at my business.
The one I saw, it's like it was an AI one sent to a decline candidate, and it said, insert decline that says it in a nice way, but doesn't give them an opportunity to reapply in the future or something. It's like they
just said the tags.
It actually had the prompt.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, I mean, the kind of emails I'm gonna open are the ones that look personalized. Like if it's come from a human and it's a video, I'm definitely gonna open that. If it's come from AI and I can see that it's been done really well and it really knows my business, I am gonna open that. I'm interested. But if it's done badly and the quality checking's not there, then that's where I'm thinking it's just not going to work. You're wasting your money. So the lesson is make sure it's a proper working process. Test it on a smaller pool first, and then fine, crank it up to 11 and then release the Kraken. Let's go for it.
It's funny you say that. When I was looking at the 500 plus things, I did a first test sample of 6. I tested 2 different tools. Tested Drive and Notebook, which is still powered by the same AI. I had a look at the results that it gave and what could be done with it. And so it was test small, roll out big. It's something I always remember from marketing.
Great.
And even to your point, like you said, you'd open videos or whatever. I have seen videos where it's either a generic video that doesn't actually mention me and it's just got my logo on it. It's clearly just been sort of mass.
I hate that.
Yeah, or it's got and Loom I think has this feature where you can actually insert a field like an email, like put the person's name, but it's still a generic email.
Yeah.
Like one guy was sending me a proposal that's customized for me, but all it did was say my name and show my website in the beginning, and then 80% of it was a generic sales pitch that it had grafted, and he was in the same outfit but with completely different lighting and shadows and backdrop, and it's like it was super janky, and it instead of lifting up his reputation in my eyes, it put him right down low to the block pile. Like it's never coming through again.
Yeah, I mean, those go straight into the spam folder. And I mean, that can't be doing their reputation any good.
I think in the topic you're talking about with recruitment, this is people's entire lives that are in your hands. Like you can't give this a light touch. This is not the thing to be just pushing at arm's length and robotizing. I mean, this is human stuff. I feel, as someone who co-owns a recruitment business, this is people's lives. It's heartstrings and emotions and hopes and opportunities that you're dealing with here. It's not a light touch game. In my opinion, it's something that needs care and diligence. And also, I imagine you're dealing with a lot of people who are hiring too late. They're probably trying to make up for that with automation or processing.
Yeah, and then they scramble and they miss important things like reference checking and then, let's do a test task. And instead they get someone that looks like they fit broadly what they need, and then they just shove it in, and they haven't really checked, is this even the right character? Are they going to fit the culture of the business?
And then there's the mercenaries. We occasionally get people like they want to hire 3 people and have a Hunger Games of sorts and then just pick one after 2 weeks and dump the other 2. Like I can't even relate to that level of coldness when it comes to how they want to recruit. So that, it takes all types. Then there are other people who are very methodical. They want multiple candidates. They want to do tests. They really put focus on the correct selection. And then often their thoroughness is going to result in a better match. But if they're too thorough or picky or perfectionist, then that person's going to be on the market again 1 month later, because nobody wants to work for that person. You know, Mimo, don't be that person that you would never want to work for.
And I think there's two sides to that. You want to be also selling your business as well, don't you? You want to be saying, this is the great reason why you want to work with me, the founder.
Well, you get to attract better candidates. I was always taught this idea of employer of choice. And I also think about how, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of the candidate, what would be a dream scenario for the employment process? And I talk about this in my book, I had the worst possible induction in the businesses I worked at, and I created the best possible system as the solution to that, which got the best results. And so putting effort and care into the recruitment process is one way that you can have your execution of your new business model stick better. I think that's the point from this story, right?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about another scenario.
So the other one I see quite a lot is the dashboard that's missing the point. So good founder knows that they need a dashboard. Well, I hope they do. You know, they come in, how am I going to look at the health of my business? What are the reds and greens? Are we doing well? Where are we doing badly? And so they rush out and they go, right, I need a dashboard. I need a dashboarding tool. And they go out and buy something like Power BI. Power BI is a great tool, but they're not being very intentional about what they're doing. And so they plug this in, they feed it some data, and they see something that looks like metrics and they run with that. And so because of this, now they've got a number of metrics. Maybe they've just used some analytics intelligence. I've seen this happen a few times. And they're now just measuring some stuff. But is it really relevant to your business? And so there are a number of problems about not being intentional with what you're doing here, because, well, first is you bought a tool. Who's going to maintain that? Is it just something that you've bought and then eventually you will lose interest in it and things that are in there will decay? It's not going to mean anything, and now you're paying a subscription cost. So who's going to own this thing and keep it going? The other thing is good old garbage in, garbage out. Like, what have you just plugged this into? Have you thought, again, about what those metrics are? And if you've got too many metrics, it's meaningless. Like, I've seen so many dashboards where it's like, you're only paying attention to 5 things, and then what's all the other stuff? It's just noise.
Well, I've had people on board and they've eagerly shared with me their spreadsheets, which I'm sure were more detailed than whatever they sent Man to the Moon with in the 60s. And they're waiting for my impressed reaction. But my eyes just bleed. I'd look at it, and thank God we can crunch that data now with AI. And when I compare it to what I'm using, like, you know what my biggest challenge with these things are? Like, this is for people who overcomplicate. Absolutely, there's people who track nothing and everything's on the back of a post-it note somewhere in the back office. Like I know I spoke to someone this week. They have no SOPs. They have no system whatsoever. That's just they bought a business from a guy who did it all in his head, and they're trying to reverse engineer it.
Wow.
Nightmare. Then there's the people who are just like overly tech whizzes. They got all the subscriptions and tools under the sun. They got all this stuff, but it means nothing because they don't even know what to look at. My system is my team take a few very specific lead and lag metrics. They put it in a spreadsheet and they take a screenshot and share it in Slack once a week. That's it. I look at that and I can compare now to last month to 6 months ago, and I have a perfect vibe on my business. I know exactly what it's doing, where it's at. And then I get financials every 10 days. So the 11th, 21st, and month end compared to the month prior. And I know exactly what's happening by product line financially. They're the two things that I get. My rule of thumb is the report comes to me. We have no fancy software subscription because the big problem with those too is like an integration breaks or a feed drops. And you probably have this with Xero. Sometimes you've got to go in and refresh the feed or whatever. You're getting wrong metrics, which is probably even worse when the numbers aren't correct. And if you pick it up too late, you've gone off a cliff before you realise.
I've got no problem with people using Power BI, but it's like crawl, walk, run, like start somewhere. And you can, as you've just mentioned, you can go a very long way with a spreadsheet. For most people, a spreadsheet with a few key measures is enough.
There's only 5 or 6 things on mine, and that's enough to run our business. And they're such good indicators of how the business is tracking. And it's not all lag metrics like things sold. It's lead metrics like how many people listened to the podcast, how many emails did we send in the last 30 days. These are very good indicators of what's about to come around the corner.
On the spreadsheet front, I mean, I like to make sure that for every measure that's in there, someone owns that. So they're responsible for making sure that that data gets into that spreadsheet before the meeting, because I'm going to ask them about it. That's on them. And sometimes if someone just puts a tool in and they're not intentional about it, you might have an owner of a dashboard, but who are the owners of the number? And then you see that, you see too many numbers. And what happens is if you give someone too many measurables, then they just move forward on the thing that's least important. So just a few measurables, things that really matter, things that align with your goals. Like what am I trying to do? What am I trying to improve in this business? Work backwards. Okay, what are we measuring? Okay, who is going to own this goal? Who's going to make sure that this measurable makes it into our report, which could even be a spreadsheet, before the next meeting? It's that simple.
Well, then there's the other element is, so you've got who's in control, who puts it there. Like the big element in terms of executing a model operationally is, once that number's there, who does that trigger to do something? So in our business, the numbers we share weekly, none of them are actually dollar numbers, but everyone in the team gets a copy of this in Slack. It's in a group channel and everyone contributes to the numbers on that sheet. And I also, as our weekly meeting for about 12 minutes, we talk about the numbers. Every single week, like a beating drum, we just talk about what are we seeing? How do we interpret this? Why did podcasts jump up by 10%? Or how did we end up with 40% more members in this product line than we had 30 days ago? What's caused this? What do we do as a result of this change in the numbers? And so what are we going to do between now and next week to execute on the information this is telling us? Because it's one thing to collect the numbers. It's another thing to actually know how to do it. And something one of my mentors taught me, Lloyd, and it's a fascinating thing, is what are the numbers not telling you? And this is like the not obvious part of it. He was an absolute spreadsheet junkie, this guy. Like my two crazy bosses. One was a statistician, methodical numbers guy. And the other guy didn't even have an office and had no business card or anything. He was more of an emotional talking type. So the spreadsheet guy, he taught me lots of things like, never trust a person who writes things down in pencil. And what are the numbers not telling you? Like when you read between the lines, what's missing from this picture, like a detective or an investigator? And I think that's a fascinating one to think about too.
Yeah, that's strong. It's a nice segue there. You were talking about, you've got the data, and then what does it mean? And let's have a conversation about it. And so that's actually my third story I want to talk about is the team that has a vision and can't execute it. And a lot of the time it's because they've lost their voice. They're not communicating enough. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about over-communicating, pointless meetings. I'm not talking about that. I've got a small business and I've got a team who are in the UK, the US, the Philippines, and Australia, and Brazil. All right, so we're spread out. I don't want to be talking on all hours of the clock. So I'm a big fan of having asynchronous communication. I use Slack. I can send voice messages. And the benefit of sending it in Slack is that they can either listen to it if they like the sound of my voice, or they can just look at
they not, Lloyd?
I know. Or for many people, they don't want audio. They can just look at the transcript. And so that's really good.
It's a great feature of Slack. I love that too, especially if you're on a phone and you're in an environment where you can't listen to audio, which is like driving or, not driving, but like you're in a place where there are other people and you don't want to bombard them with audio. And if you don't carry headphones, it's great to be able to just read.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I want to just read my messages.
Or if you're watching Netflix or something.
Yeah.
You just scan a text.
So asynchronous messaging is great. Big fan of that. But you still need to keep two-way. And one thing I've seen is we've had people running meetings, and then to inform everyone about who's going to do what next, they just send out the AI notes. And I'm like, come on, you still need to have two-way. If I'm going to give something to someone to own, I want to make sure they understand what are they going to own. Is it clear what they're accountable for? So big fan of doing the AI summary, but we still need to have a meeting periodically with people to understand when they need context. They need to have a discussion. We need to be able to collaborate, not just to have the data. Otherwise, we start having communication breakdown and mistrust. So just having the right amount of rhythms, like a weekly catch up with your team to make sure that things are still getting executed, people know what they're accountable for.
I think it's important. We still do a weekly catch up in my team. It takes 10 or 12 minutes. We don't do video. I just say that because my team's in the Philippines, because I think almost all of them are women except for one, and they've expressed a desire to me not to be on camera. I respect that. And audio is fine. I like them to hear me and to know that they can feel safe and comfortable about the mood of the business, because they can detect that. You know, like a parent, the baby will cry if the parent's distressed. They will know that I'm positive about the business, that I'm excited about the business. They can detect that from the tone. And I can also detect when I'm talking to them how interested they are in things, and also if they're not well or they feel reserved about something, I might lean into that a little, and because I want them to have a good fit with the work they're doing. I want them to be working on things they're aligned to, and I can tell all of that from a 10 or 12-minute audio. Not to put them on the spot or make them feel like I'm scrutinising them. It's just a human attribute that you miss in an AI notes update that you don't get from the day-to-day back and forth texting. I think it's the glue that holds the culture together in our business is high level of trust and communication awareness, and it's working really well for us. It's been going for 16 years straight now. Since 2009 we've done this. And I will say, if you have a brand new team, I used to meet with them daily. If you have a very large team, I used to meet with them daily on a rolling meeting until we all knew what we were doing and had our stuff dialed. Weekly is a good cadence for a mature team or a team of operators who know what they're doing and have a huge degree of responsibility.
I mean, it's amazing when you think something is crystal clear. Sometimes you might send that one way and it means something completely different to someone else. So just having that regular catch up to say, hey, I don't have to say, do you understand? It's more like, hey, what's your take on this? You know, how would you do this? You know, ask some questions to make sure they understand it, but also make sure like maybe they've got a better way of doing this. So just having that two-way is really important. It keeps the team engaged.
Like that's actually you're kind of just lightly brushing over that, but it is the kind of thing that destroys a team. Is when the boss is a command and conquer boss. Like, am I making myself clear? What part of that don't you understand? All those sort of terminologies, they just suppress people. They're just smashing them down to a point where they're not really safe to communicate with you.
And they're quietly quit.
They quietly quit. Yep. They just, especially some cultures, they will just be repelled by that. It's fear and aggression. Passive aggressive behavior is also difficult for people to be around. So I like how you said that. It's like, look, these are my thoughts. I don't know all the answers. I'm happy for anyone to contribute. Often the ideas will come from somewhere else. Maybe I'm not seeing the whole picture. I'm just describing the challenge we're having and what sort of result I had in mind, but I'm certainly open to how it could be solved. And I often don't mandate timelines for things. I usually indicate an urgency level or an importance level, but I let them work around it. So we're actually having that situation at the moment in my business where I've got an urgent matter that needs happening in terms of a slight tuning of our brand across one of my brands, and it's just for trademark reasons. And so I've discussed what needs to happen. I've discussed that it's important, and I've said let's see if we can work our way through all of the things. Here are the ones I've thought of, but I'm sure there are more. Let's get this done. Within a few hours, they'd completed it during the night. I didn't say I need you to do it right now, but they understood that it was something that's important because they understood why it's important and they understood what good looks like. And then they assembled around that. And that is such a good cohesive team that communicates well.
there's two things that come up there for me. One is asking them letting them have the freedom to get it done. And sometimes, rather than just say, hey, these are all the tasks, these are all the deadlines. Well, where's the feedback loop there? So, it's just like shouting down the hole to get it done. Like, it's not going to work. Rather than just saying, hey, these are the things, these are the priorities. Can you give me some feedback when you think you can get these done? And then you'll discover what else is on their plate.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we need to prioritize?
And
okay,
sometimes
we can move that around.
You specifically need to say, I'm happy for everything else we do to go on hold until this one thing is done, because it's more important than all the other things.
Yeah, how do they know what's important unless you tell them in terms of priority order? And that's another reason why it's so important to have that regular catch-up to talk about the priority of things.
And I can't remember what you call this type of leader, but there's that sort of whack-a-mole game where the leader always seems to be able to find the one thing that team member didn't do and focus all their energy on that. Why wasn't this done, or why wasn't that done?
The dictator.
Yeah, like they're dismissing the other 99 things that got done. I'm sure this happens in households too. Well, like you do all the other stuff, but that one thing you didn't do is where all the focus will go on it, and it is demoralizing.
Normally, the dictator is also someone that complains to me that their team don't take initiative. But when I get into that, it's quite often because they're not letting their team feel safe, because anytime they do something that's creative or outside of the SOP because they found another way, they just yell at them. And so you've got to make them feel safe. You've got to ask for their inputs. You've got to talk to them, get their feedback, and then you get the initiative and the creativity. Otherwise, you just kill that, and they're just going to stick exactly to the process that they've been given. And they'll come back to you with more questions like, oh, sir, is this okay? Can we do this? And then that's a problem if they have to call you sir. Well,
there's a name I learnt in the 90s, and it's called malicious obedience. When you've got an arsehole boss and the employee only does the things the boss says to the letter and nothing more, nothing less, that's called malicious obedience. And basically it's designed to fail the leader, because the leader will say, well, why didn't you do this? And like, you didn't ask me to do that. You said do that. You said do this thing, and I did that thing. Yes, but I mean, common sense would, no, you didn't ask me to do that. I'm sure of it. And so they only getting, so much sense. Yeah. It's like a shadow. You only get the specific shadow of the thing asked for, nothing more, nothing less. And that's a symptom of a very bad leader when you're getting malicious obedience. And of course, there is the occasional team member, if they're a wrong fit hire, that might lean to that. And it's about not taking risks. They don't want to be exposed. The boss can never say that they didn't do the one thing they asked to, because they always did. Mm. So what happened to the AI meeting notes scenario? Is that still going, or did it not pan out as great as they thought?
Oh, look, they still use the AI notes, but they still have they're going to have a catch up to explain. Like they have people and say, look, at the end of this, these are the actions. This is who's going to own what. When can it get done by? So they still got that two-way piece. They now have a meeting, a team meeting, rather than just a few people and here's everything that needs to get done. They keep people engaged. And that's a very simple fix. It does take a bit more time, but it doesn't need to take a huge amount of time. You just need to have that feedback loop. And so actually the next thing I wanted to talk about is kind of the pass on of that, or the thing that's further down the pipe of that, is the task trap. So the overbuilding before the basics are right.
And this is another thing that makes my eyeballs bleed, when like the perfectionist over engineering type leader who crosses T's, dots I's, and they build an impossible structure that makes it so hard for people to do without, it's too much over engineering perhaps.
I see that side, and then I see the other side of the classic visionary who sees a shiny object, goes out and goes, okay, I know that I've got tasks piling up, or things are getting dropped, so I know I'll go out and buy ClickUp or Monday and Asana. And by the way, I do recommend that people use task tracking tools. But they'll go and enable every single feature under the sun, get the dashboards and the summaries and the advanced automations, the goal tracking, everything. But they're not actually looking to see, like, where are the key elements that we need to put in place to make sure things get owned? Like, okay, so there's a task. Who's going to be owning that task? Have they given me a deadline? Is it clear what that person needs to do? Where does that task fit in the priority of other things? And if you don't do this, ClickUp actually makes things worse. People, or Asana, I'm picking up ClickUp. Yeah. All of these tasks start building up and building up until people start getting disengaged and they say, oh, ClickUp doesn't work or Asana doesn't work because they've stopped using it, they stopped engaging with it, they start doing tasks outside of the system. Whereas if you're saying something, which I've said myself before, if it's not in ClickUp, it doesn't exist because I want to make sure that these key processes are getting done. It will if it's not getting properly used, then it will just decay and it will become a nightmare to run.
And it seems a lot of these tools are not operating the same way that humans intuitively operate. I've had a client install that lately because they were just using a spreadsheet and there's two of them and it was all like they were doing everything. And now with ClickUp, they've been able to get some Zapier integrations to automate some features. Like they put something in and then the next stage is for another client of mine, he's got someone to code the software. They put it in ClickUp, it then automatically goes off and does all the stuff that was being done manually and then comes back into ClickUp as an output. So it's a fantastic railway system. It's the train tracks for their business. It's, to speaking to your point of simplicity, like in my business, we don't have ClickUp. We're really only just using Slack, but we have very clear accountability and fundamentals. We need to do a podcast each week. As part of that, it means we do an email for the podcast. We do socials for the podcast. All support questions have to be answered in a timely manner. That's basically the beating drum of my business. We don't need ClickUp for that because it happens every single week, all year long, with the same team for 15 years. We know who does what, when and how, and they communicate very well when they're away. But that takes maturity. That's like a red wine in an oak vat for a decade to come out as a beautiful deep red, right? It's not Ribena cordial. It's like it's a well-oiled machine with very few inputs, really. I could describe my whole business in 5 points. Whereas if you have a service business dealing with external customers and there's 50 project touch points, you're absolutely going to need a system like that.
And, whether you're using ClickUp or a spreadsheet or even neither of the two, having a rhythm with the team to review periodically what's there. And some of it might be, okay, this stuff's not even important anymore. Let's like close and get rid of that stuff. That's noise. That's last year's news or maybe last week's news. Get rid of all the noise and just keep the list of things that are important. Like what's the priority order? How do you know your team are working on the right thing? So whatever you're using, ClickUp, a spreadsheet, or just messaging in Slack, there needs to be some way of keeping a few priorities so the team know what the order is and getting rid of the stuff that's no longer important. Otherwise, it's just going to build up, cause overwhelm, and just do the opposite to what you wanted.
In other words, it's not about the tool.
It's not about the tool.
It's not about the tool. It's about the fundamentals. If you don't have the right people who know why they're there and what they're supposed to be doing, the few things that are actually important, then all your great planning and business models will not get executed, tool or no tool.
And that's the same for all of the things that I've just talked about. If I think about like all of the common theme across all of that, the tools are just an amplifier. So if you've got a unstructured, poor-looking process, when you try and dial it up with the tools, you're going to get in a mess quicker. If you've got a good structured process and you add the tools and you do it properly, your delivery is going to be cooking on gas. That's what you want. So if I look at the teams that I see doing it well, then we've looked at like how the founder is working with the system and how we've taken that off the plate. We've worked out who's accountable for what. We've put in the right rhythms. We've put the dashboards in and we've put the feedback loops in. So we're constantly looking to improve all of those things. And those are the fundamentals.
I've always described what you do as really good at people and systems. Like you can have all the sales and marketing, you can have your whizzy-dizzy AI tools and have a great business model, but ultimately it gets to the people and systems part, and that's when it either sticks or it doesn't. I know as part of your process, the first step is usually to go and have a look at what's happening, like do an audit. From there, you end up with an output of a map, right? Like, hey, visionary, here are your people, here are your systems. these are the things that you should look at. What kind of things are you looking at in that audit process when people hire VirtualDOO.com to come and have a look under the hood?
Yeah, I mean, in a short couple of sound bites, we want to know where they want to head. So vision, their values, because we're going to use that for hiring, accountability. Where's the founder's time going? Because we want to make sure that they're not working in the business. We want them working on the business. We're looking at their operational rhythms. We're looking at the dashboards. We're looking at the feedback loops. We're looking at the tech setup, and then we look at revenue operations. Like how is it that they're working with their CRM? Are they leaving money on the table, or sales and marketing working together? So we do a 1 month audit. We work with the team. We find out what's working and what's not working. And it's not just following a strict set of questions. We do a lot of discovery. And then the output of that is a plan. And say, look, this is what you should do in priority order. You do this. This was low effort, high impact. Priority number 1. Here's this, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is how you would do it. You would do this. And then they can decide whether they want to fix that item themselves or whether they want to bring in us or another company to go and resolve. And actually what I've recently invested in is just getting a short assessment together that I can just put out online so that people can now see that and just see, okay, do I have an operational gap here straight out? So there's a free one that's just going out there now.
So it's like an operational chaos calculator.
I'm going to call it that.
Where's that? Where do you hide that one?
Yeah, so that's. I'm just going to rename it to Operational Chaos Calculator. Thanks, James. The copy skills right there. So that's on virtualdoo.com/assess.
There you go. I like it. So basically, AI is great. Business models are awesome, but if you're not able to land it, then it's all for nothing. I do like. I've noticed, like when you're doing these audits or whatever, you're often asking me questions and stuff. Like I can see that you're paying attention to the specific needs of each of the clients and drawing on my experience as well. It's a good idea. I think what we do is hand in glove. I've got these visionaries coming in who usually always need a change in business model and almost always are not quite in the people and systems setup where they can execute quickly. It does sometimes happen, but it's rarer. Often people are under-resourced with team, or if they do have team and systems, there's bloat and it's inconsistent. Like being able to iron that out is such a valuable thing with a long-term payoff. Like that means every new project or everything that comes down the pipeline in the future gets the leverage from doing this upfront fix.
Yeah, I mean the return on investment's huge. If we're able to the revenue ops one, which we've been spending more time on, is a case of like, can we make a few quick, small changes and get them making money out of this? That's straight off we cover our fees, and then just if there's ways to make them more efficient, and normally there's low hanging fruit. I've never done an assessment where we've not found some like quick wins in there about how their communication's set up with the team. Is this inefficient? How they're structured? Are they wasting too much time in their rhythms? Have they learned from their last mistakes? Is there some campaign templates we can put into place? There's so many easy, quick wins that you can put into a business. And one of the reasons for engaging you and getting your thoughts on things is because there's two sides to things. There's one, we work with many different businesses and there's a lot of challenges that are the same around, oh, okay, we know this communication, we know this task management tool, we know these rhythms work and so forth. But then there's also business models and that changes over time in terms of, and then there's tooling which changes. So it's always good to get another perspective and plug into your community and get the experience from there as well and see how things are changing and see how we can apply that to businesses. So
I love it.
It's been a great help.
I'm also really excited to see the introduction of Do AI coming through with all your frameworks and systems and methodologies that can help with that process. It's an exciting transition.
Thanks, James. Yeah, it's very exciting times.
All right. Well, there you go. Lloyd Thompson, virtualdoo.com. Thank you for sharing. The top level sort of idea from this episode is that you can have all the great ideas and business models in the world, but if you can't execute, it's worthless. I mean, some people say execution is a given, but it still hasn't panned out that way yet. I mean, we're all excited about vibe coding and AI tools and everything, but there is still often that critical step just to lock it all in and get it done. So if you need help getting things done, if your vision's not coming out the way you thought, or your team can't think for themselves, or you're not sure who you should have or what they're working on or which are the best tools, or if you're operating correctly or not, Lloyd is the guy to chat to. We'll catch you on a future episode, Lloyd.
Thanks, James. Good to be here. See you next time.
See ya.
This is James Schramko.